you are listening to the Kinetic Man podcast. I'm Stuart.
And I'm David, and we want to walk with you on the journey to living a life defined by uncommon action that is full of purpose, adventure, and meaningful relationships. Our goal is to refine our why while helping you find yours, and together achieve our best and highest purpose. In the end, we'll drive each other to leave the potential life behind and become kinetic men.
Men, what's up? Hey, this is Stu, and we have some really big news to share. We believe men deserve more clarity, more challenging conversations, more accountability, more action, more friends, and more impact. See, we started the Kinetic Man to have more. For over 3 years, we have seen the power of intentional men coming together and changing each other's lives. We are beyond excited for you to experience the life-changing potential of these conversations and gatherings. Because of that, because we want more men to join us in this journey, we've lowered the price to $50 a month. That's less than your Disney Plus subscription, Hulu, YouTube, any of those other subscriptions that bring way less value on a weekly basis than the Kinetic Man does. So we'd love for you to join the tribe. If you're ready to take action, use the link below in the show notes of this podcast, or you can go directly to thekineticman.com and smash that join now button and come be different, be better, be a kinetic man. We'll see you soon. Hey, I got a 90s hip hop trivia question for you.
Easy.
Which rapper said, "Mo money, mo problems"?
Come on, dude. Are you going to ask a real question, or is this going to be, well, give context. Just said it, because that could be any number of rappers, or
sang
actually
it in a song.
Sang a song.
Yeah. Mo money, mo problems.
You talking about like a little P. Diddy? Wow.
Was it P. Diddy?
I don't know his name. I don't know his name. I think it's P. Diddy. Well, not that I don't know his name. I'm saying he changes his name. My first thought is P. Diddy, but I don't know if he's Diddy. I don't know if he's Diddy Dot. I don't know.
I never heard Diddy Dot.
I don't know what his prison name's gonna be. That's messed up. That's cold. That's cold.
I thought it was Notorious B.I.G.
No, I think they did they were both on the, I don't know who gets credit for the album. I think they did it together because they did a lot of stuff together.
Yeah.
I don't know. Look it up. What's the answer? You're asking the question, you don't know the answer?
No, I don't know the answer.
Oh.
I thought
normally
you would.
the best way to have these kind of questions is to actually have the answer. You know what I'm saying?
You're like a
then
90s hip hop guru,
smart,
dude.
You know what I mean? You can look smart.
I didn't know the answer.
Same. That's a really good question. It's very relevant. Very relevant. And
that's why I asked it.
It is. So it's funny because it is Notorious B.I.G. He gets credit for the song, but when you look at the video, the first face to pop up is P. Diddy. So I don't know what you do with that, but I'll give it I'll give that one to you as Notorious B.I.G. Good cultural reference, Stu.
Thanks.
Here's a question for you.
Yeah.
Have you ever noticed when you think about finances, would you say you'd characterize your conversations around finances as profound, or would you say extremely superficial and even borders on fabrication, potentially lies, and make yourself seem a little better than maybe you are?
I guess it depends on with whom you're having the conversation with. I mean, I would like to say that I don't think I have those type of conversations that are superficial about money. Probably because we've gone through this iteration and this exercise and the reflection period within TKM for quite some time now. 5-10 years ago, maybe. Today, I don't know. I don't think I have those conversations about being superficial or overinflating about money.
But it's interesting to me. I think, especially in the real estate world, or when you talk in the entrepreneurial world, and I've noticed this a lot, that even today, the conversation surrounding finances, I'll find myself like, for example, someone you talk real estate, you're like, oh, what kind of portfolio, what do you invest in? And someone will be like, oh, well, I've got 100 doors. But because it's almost that's not the real if you're talking in the context of finances, that's not the real question. It's not the real conversation, right? Like the real conversation is, how are they performing or whatever. But there's this I've just found, and even and I think I'm guilty of it. And I think you and I have changed so much when we talk about it. Like we'll be like, someone will be like, oh, tell me about your portfolio. We'll be like, well, we own this, 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 and this. But we're like losing money here, here, here. Like we're very quick to say, yeah, this is not those the potentially the number of doors is not indicative of a
How much
great
money
cash
it
flowing
produces.
ride or whatever it is, right? And I think a lot of people, it's fascinating about as the reason we're talking about finances, this is finance month in the Kinetic Man. And this conversation is, excuse me, is so fascinating. Actually, interestingly enough, and dude, God's timing is never off, but I had a conversation with my dad, and I'm gonna have a conversation with my parents tomorrow, over coffee, whatever. Just walking through some different finances and different aspects of just kind of, we're gonna have conversations around future and planning, all that kind of stuff. And it was what hit me today as I was talking to my dad first. I was just like, hey, I think these are the questions. And I was like, it's not that I'm really smart on this. It's that I was preparing this week for a conversation of finances with this group of men who, this is a topic that we dive deep into. And so these questions aren't necessarily things that it's just because I'm so enlightened financially and have any answers, because these are just questions we asked the group. And so I was like, hey, so here's some things that I would consider, right? Like, as you're looking at expenses, do you want to maximize expenses on potentially like where you live, or do you want to maximize experiences with the grandkids? And like if you set a budget, say the budget is whatever, it's simple math, $1,000 a month on living expense, or to say you want to bump your expenses $1,000 a month to get into a different house. What if you took that delta and say you put something on the calendar every month to do with the grandkids just for experiences, and you had now $1,000 of just money that you set aside for experience? Like, what does that do? And which one is preferable? Like, what do you want to do? And consider all factors, right? Like a lot of times people don't talk. And I would say a couple years ago, this may have been more uncomfortable, but I brought it in like, hey, you guys are in the third of life, right? Like you have to think about the realities of death. We all do. But as we get closer to what an expected life expectancy, allow myself to introduce myself. When you start looking at averages and data, like it just they're just inputs against which you can plan. And what's interesting to me is that I think a lot of us just don't. And then when you do that, when you Google the five what is it, the five regrets of the dying, or like one of our favorite authors, Jordan Grummett, Doc G, when you read his book, Taking Stock, or when you look at some of the stuff that he does, you realize a lot of people die with regret, but I think it's just because they don't think about it, or nobody's ever challenged them to talk about it, or they don't have a group of men like we do, where we spend an entire month on just talking finances and the implications, right? Like when you think about finances, things that should come to mind are not just bank accounts and savings and checking, whatever. It should be like death, mortality, like what happens. It should be conversations around divorce. I mean, you might as well correlate what's correlatable, and the number one reason people get divorced is typically finances, right? I'd say a large part of why business partners fail or friendships fail are finances. Like how many stories do you have? Well, I lent my buddy some money, or I lent my family some money and they never pay me back, whatever that story is. But there's simple ways around that too, right? Like, did you ever have anybody challenge you to say, hey, any money you give friends or family is a gift? If you get it back, cool. Like just that idea, somebody saying that to me changed my entire it changed everything, the way I think about all these things, right? And so I think this conversation is fascinating because it often is surface level. It often is strewn with lies or maybe mistruths or maybe some slight fabrication or ways that we can appear better than we are, and it doesn't get to the root of something that is absolutely critical, a topic that deserves us to dive deep. It deserves a month. It deserves a lifetime, but it deserves a month to really dive into and to be so intentional and to be so action oriented, but also to be like, no kidding, I'm going to be accountable to this, right? And as men of faith, I read an interesting article the other day. I was telling the group yesterday. It was Rick Warren did he does these daily like little articles, and this one was pray before you pay. And his argument was, as a person of faith, like, do you take all your purchases to God? Like maybe there's a blessing that's just waiting for you to ask for it, but you'll never get it because you don't ask. And maybe it's a car, maybe it's a hat, maybe it's whatever. It's not prosperity gospel junk. It's no kidding. Like maybe God just wants to, he's so concerned about all of the details of your life that he just wants to bless you with a thing. But I mean, if you don't ask, then, then why would he? Why not put your faith in that? And so it's just a fascinating discussion because it is a part of our everyday lives, finances. If I don't pay the internet, we're not having this conversation, right? If I don't have a laptop, we're not recording a podcast. So I mean, it's an aspect of everyday life, but we just don't a lot of times give it its due until it's too late or until something happens and it becomes critical. It becomes right now when most of those right nows are things we could have thought about potentially decades earlier.
Yeah, man. It's an interesting exercise that we also go through is just kind of looking back through the lens of how we grew up, in our programming, how we were taught as children, the words and phrases and the feelings and the energy that surrounded us around the topic of money. And again, to your point, I don't think a lot of us do the mental exercise of kind of going through that and reflecting to understand, why do I feel this way about money? Why do I say this? Why do I spend money here but not here? Why do I get angry every time this amount of money goes towards this? Like, why do I get angry when the church asks for money? Like, there's so many things that revolve around the topic of finances that come from the way that we grew up, come from our programming. And then additionally, how are we then turning around and programming our children, right? The things that we say, the things that we do, the things that we purchase, the way that we live. Like, what is that telling our children? How are we programming that to them? How are we modeling what's important? We like to say, um, you look at your calendar in your bank account or your checkbook, and you know it's going to be important to you. So what are you showing? What are you showing to your
Yeah, we need to
children?
change that because all our young listeners, all our
They don't
millennials,
they don't know
and
what
they're
checkbooks
like,
are.
checkbook. What the heck is a
What is
checkbook?
a checkbook?
Checkbook. Who
Yeah.
uses checkbooks?
But going through that exercise for me has been really eye-opening. Just thinking about what what was said to me as a child. Um, you know, being in the room when my parents fought about money, hearing constantly over and over again this idea of saving, right? Putting money away, thrifting, being, frugal, like all these things like have impacted the way that I treat money now. And and I mean, and that's going to be passed down, right? If I don't realize it and make a change for the good, I can take that same model and that same programming and pass it down to my child. It's an interesting thought process.
Well, and really, I think like anything, intentionality and depth of consideration are critical, right? So a lot of times we we'll look at these topics and we'll take snippets of things that are recommended, like, hey, you should be, you should save, you should, whatever. And we don't ask why. Why am I saving? What am I saving for? One of the conversations I had with my dad today, I was just asking him questions, and he was talking about, and I want to leave money for the kids and the grandkids. I said, hey, let's take her on that for a sec. Let's take her on that. I said, here's what I want for you, because we've done this thought process. I've read book when we read books, Die with Zero, and we've read it. We've had multiple conversations about this very topic of passing money down. And so I told him, I was like, you know what? I don't want, what would make me happy, the legacy that you could leave for me is that you use the remainder of your years to invest heavily in experiences with your family. Like I don't want a penny from you. We're adult children now. Like, I have a responsibility to my family. And I said, and I'm very open with my kids about it. I tell my kids, I'm like, hey, I even show them their accounts. I'm like, here is from the day you had a social security number, which was the first day that I can invest for you into these different things. I have these accounts set up for you. And the day that I turn these over to you, that is the financial legacy I'm giving you. Right. And so for us specifically, I mean, get into strategies. For us specifically, each child has a whole life policy, because I'm a big believer in whole life policies. I set them up very intentionally so that they would be effectively paid up when I give it to them. They could continue to pay into them. They could do it. But even if they never put another penny in, the cash value of those policies will continue to keep that policy alive, and their family will now have, excuse me, can now be a beneficiary of their death benefit. And the way I did that, I said, okay, I'm going to invest this much a year per kid. What is the maximum amount of what's the maximum policy I can get on my kids for this amount that I'm willing to spend to invest for them? And that number was, for each of the kids, was north of 700K. Uh, what that means is, when they have their own family and whatever, if something were to happen, each of my children, a legacy that I have passed on to them, each of my children will now have at least 700 plus $1,000 of death benefit for their family, not to count whatever the cash value is within those policies, which should be significant, in their 20s. That's the legacy. Like, but that didn't come about until you and we dove into this, and I'm like, oh, you know what? Why would I save and do all this kind of stuff and prepare to give my kids their an inheritance or money when they're potentially, ideally, when they're in their 60s, 50s or 60s when I pass away? Like, is that really going to be beneficial, or do they need something in their 20s? And if I prepare and have a mindset of thinking, hey, your financial gift from me will be turned over to you in your 20s, that's a very different conversation. And also for me, like, I'm off the hook, dude. Like, I'm gonna start spending, like, the rest of the money that, or the financial position I want to put myself in, will be fully dedicated to the experiences that I want to have for the rest of my life at that point, which will include my kids. And which, like, how baller would it be? And this is just a thought exercise. How baller would it be, instead of trying to buy, like, a nicer house or whatever, say you calculate the difference and you're like, you know what, I'm going to take the difference in that pay, or maybe even get rid of a current house when the family leaves, downsize, and take that delta and say, you know what, I'm going to commit to, this is a commitment, Stu. Here's a commitment. I'm going to commit to spending that delta on experiences with potentially my family. So I'm going to reach out to my kids when they have my grandkids are young. I'm going to say, I'm going to take, whether it's monthly or whether it's compiled and it's biannually, whatever, I am going to take this money, say it's $1,000 a month, and say you do it biannually. I'm going to take $6,000 and just take your kids, my grandkids, and we're going to go do some, like, baller thing, whatever it is. And all that 6K is just going to be spent on them. I'll tell you, dude, if I got rid of my house and potentially rented something a lot smaller for me and my wife, that number could be multiple thousands. just in insurance taxes alone. But the difference in the mortgage, that could be potentially 2,000 bucks a month, 3,000 bucks a month that I'm now saying that amount that is fully dedicated. The ROI on that is going to be the memories I create with my kids and grandkids. Dude, that could be baller. But that level of intentionality, that why gives you a reason to go through finance. And I have these conversations with my kids, right? Hey, here's your account. This is how much money is in it. It's an educational conversation with the kids. Here's all the stuff. Here's why I chose life insurance. Here's whatever you can educate your kids and be like, and by the way, like, don't call me. This is for you to manage and steward because I desire to manage and steward it well for you. And
Well,
so there's a lot of lessons in the intentionality, right? And there's so many things we could do that when we get to the end of life, we're not like, oh, I should have hung out with my grandkids more. No,
yeah.
dude, I plan. My goal is that my grandkids and my kids, by the time I go, it's a celebration of all of these things that they can recount story after story after story. I went to the mountains with my grandpa. We did this, we fished, we hunted, we did all these things because that's what I truly want my living legacy to be. And I've determined that. And now I've forced my finances to be a mechanism in the tool beholden to me through which I achieve the things that are greater, which really have nothing to do with a bottom line bank account. I'll be very disappointed if when I die and I have no other obligations, I'll be very disappointed if that thing doesn't hit zero.
Yeah, it's going through the process of aligning your finances to your values, right? It's looking at your bank account, looking at your finances, looking at your spending, looking at your expenses, and saying, does this match the value that I have aligned with my life, right? Am I spending?
Assuming you've taken the step to even understand what the value is, right?
Yep. Yeah. Again, which is something, that we do in the Kinetic Man is defining the your core values for your family, for your personal life. And we have everyone has core values in their business, but do you have core values for your family? Do you have core values for your personal life? Most don't, right? And then also in this identity piece, which we also go through, is like aligning and defining your identity and defining success, right? What does success mean? Most people think that success equals the bottom line of a bank account, right? But if you're redefining that and you're saying, no, success is creating a family trip every single year. And it doesn't have to even be expensive. It doesn't have to be like going to some extravagant, you know, other country. It could be like, something local, going creeking on the weekend like, for free, right? It could be anything. It's just spending time. So it's really just looking at your finances and aligning that to your values. What do I value? Who am I as a person? Am I a fit, individual that's in the 70s? Am I spending money on my health and wellness? Am I eating right? Am I going to the gym? Am I spending money there? Or am I like spending a bunch of crap on crap food at the McDonald's and drive-throughs because I'm hurried and rushed and trying to like make money elsewhere, right? Like what are you spending money on to align to your values? It's a fantastic exercise to go through. Like literally, go through your bank account, like go through, your monthly credit card statements, your monthly checking and savings accounts, and line item by line item, look at, all right, where is this going? What is this for? Does this align with my values? What am I spending money on? And if you're spending money on like Amazon all the time and just like stuff and things and like more junk, like maybe it's time to question like where your values align. Like, am I valuing materialistic things? Am I valuing how I look to others? Am I valuing like what people think about me? I don't know. It's good exercise.
Yeah, and I don't want to suggest, we're not suggesting that material things are bad or good. I think the bad is in just doing things by habit. If it's bad habits, right? Like I'm just spending to spend, or I'm getting things to get, or there's no real, question of do I need another of this thing? What is the opportunity cost? I think is a more important question. What is the opportunity cost? What can I now not do with this, or what can I do with it? Right? You just put some thought to it. And I think, just as a kind of to focus the conversation as well around this finances piece and its importance, there are a lot of times when we have financial conversations because like I don't to me the financial conversation is not it's just an opportunity to talk about hammers, right? Like it's not something that I define myself by. It's not something that um that I desire to be a thing that is, a foundation of our friendship or any of that kind of stuff. I like to understand. I like to use it as a tool to understand myself and understand somebody better, to get to know them better, right? And I find it interesting that when a lot of times the financial conversation is a very quick conversation when I'm having it with somebody else. And typically it's like, hey, what are your financial goals? What do you when you think finances, what are your goals? And a lot of folks I talk to, it's like, well, I want to be comfortable. Huh? Comfortable. What does that mean? And as a side note, like everybody says I want to be comfortable. That's what everybody says. Like that's the number one answer. I want to be comfortable. And I don't even know what that means. Like, what does it mean to be comfortable? What would it take to be comfortable? Are you comfortable now? Are you uncomfortable? Like, what is that? It's such a cop out because everybody, I think a lot of times we're like, oh, yeah, 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 that sounds great. Yeah, I want to be comfortable too. It's like success. I want to be successful. Okay, cool. Like, what does that mean? I don't understand that answer. But if you never even ask, and typically, we believe in like the multiple why question, right? The multiple level whys, seven whys. You get to seven whys deep into something, like you're getting pretty deep. Usually one why is where most of these things fall apart. Okay, why? Like what is comfortable and why? Uh, well, I don't know. Never really thought about that. Well, but you just said like your whole financial plan and outlook is based on this idea of being comfortable. Yet you don't know what comfortable means. No clue. And so it's and then if pushed, well, I want it like $1 million in the bank. Awesome. $1 million in the bank. Like
Why?
what is that like? What does $1 million do for you? Like, what is it because you want to put it like into an annuity and you're banking on 4% and you think you could like you've done your budget and you think you can live on a 4% annual return on $1 million annuity? What? No, like, no, I have no idea what you're talking about. Then what? I don't have any idea what you're talking about either. But the problem with that is it gives insight into truly how little thought we put into it for ourselves. It also shows that somebody somewhere said $1 million, and so now you're basing your financial future on that. But it's fascinating too because you're like, well, what if you had $500,000? Like with that, and most people are like, yeah, that'd be dope. All right, cool. We just cut quote unquote comfort and your financial goals in half, and you'd still are like super ecstatic about that. And I think the most sad part about that conversation is it gives insight into the fact that we have no idea what we want. Two, is it tied to any value if we know what our values are? And three, it gives no framework or paves no path for a future investment in the things that are most important to us, most likely our relationships. And so, how much potential is there, and how many things are lost in the course of a lifetime by staying the course? And the course is just this fluffy word of comfort. And it's not even suggesting that you're not like saving, I save 20%. Like I'm a 20% saver. Awesome. Why? What are you saving for? I don't know, man. That's someone said save
Because they,
25%.
because they said so on Bigger Pockets or Choose FI
Whatever.
or whatever, right? Yeah.
And I'll even get if you're listening to Bigger Pockets or Choose FI, at least you're listening to podcasts actively and getting
Yeah.
educated on something. Maybe there's a why in that. But but at the end of the day, when I started thinking about this for me and we started having this conversation in our group, it's almost like it hit me. I'll tell you what hit me the hardest. My time here is extremely limited. That's what hit me. I have to maximize my time here, not my dollar amount, my time. because my kids and my family and my friends don't give a rip about how much money I make. They care about how much I love them and am intentional and present. And if I can use my finances to enable some awesome, awesome experiences, then dude, that's what I want to do. And so can you plan for that? Of course you can. Of course you can. Just how is it that you go about it, right? And so tomorrow the conversation with my parents is going to really focus around what do you guys want? What do you want from the rest of your life? Let's no kidding, maybe you have 25 years left, maybe, right? And of those, we'll say 20 of them are you're in good health to do whatever you want. Say, whatever it is. Like, what do you want to do with those? Here's the ages of the kids at that point. Like, what do you want to do? And backwards plan. And dude, it can be as simple as I told my dad, I'm like, how cool would it be if like you guys took the kids on the same day of the week, like the third Friday of every month was ice cream with Yaya and Gramps Day. Like, dude, that's so simple and basic. Do you think that would make a memory? Like, do you think my kids will be talking about that forever?
100%.
Third Friday of every month was Dairy Queen with Yaya and Gramps, without fail. Like, dude, they'll never forget that. And that's dude, that's like low hanging fruit, bro. But how many of us do that? And oftentimes the conversation is, oh, I don't have ice cream, but multiple times a month. We don't have money. Is that in the budget? We don't have money for that. Really? Okay, cool.
That's been a mindset shift for me is just starting to say yes more to even just the smallest expenses. Not because of I have the money to do so, but because of the fact that it's going to create a memory, right? Whether it's the extra trip, whether it's the weekend away, whether it's the Slurpee after school, you know, whatever that is, like to your point, the ice cream, like that creates memories. And at the end of the day, it's really not that much money. Like, what are you gonna do with that money instead? Are you gonna put that $5.60 into the bank account and let it accrue over compounding interest over 6 years? Sure. What's that gonna do for you? And maybe it's the get a coffee once a week from Starbucks and give it to your bride and say, I love you. Like that's a love language, as a
Those are like
gift.
$10 now. So I mean, that's an
Sure.
investment.
Yeah, it's an investment. But like those are the things I'm starting to say yes to more as my mindset has changed towards this idea of money, right? And it's all based back on your values and your identity. Another question that comes up is, like how do you balance this drive, this desire for more versus contentment? And what's enough? What's enough? Like, when do you stop earning? When do you stop trying to make more money? When do you stop, getting stuff and things?
Yeah.
I think it's
And
an
I think a
individual
big
answer, but it's an interesting one.
100%. And I think it's an individual answer for sure, and that's great. But I think there are things that we could practically do. Like for example, I think one of the biggest counters to spending is is list, name, however you do it, write it down, spend time in the things you have, the things that you do have, the things you're grateful for, right? So you do some gratitudes. And people like to trump up gratitudes as like a touchy-feely thing. It's not. And it's funny to me, people are much more willing to sit in negative thoughts and not challenge the negativity of the things and be like, well, I wish I had. And they'll spend a lot of time in that. But when you suggest that you intentionally spend time on the opposite of that, it's like, oh, that's touchy feely. That's dude, you're doing it anyways. You're just doing it on the negative. You're just focus, your focus is somewhere else, and you have the ability and the power to change that. It's up to you whether you choose to do that or not. I mean, that's on you, right? But you're already doing it. We are thinking beings. We have, I don't know what the math is, dude, but it's, thousands, tens of thousands of thoughts a day, and a certain percentage of those are negative. Well, why not change that paradigm and focus on the things that I have, the things I'm grateful for, and lean into that, and then make decisions from that place, right? Like, do I really need another Amazon box? Or like, what am I trying to do? Even better, like, what is that doing for me? Because usually it boils down to you're masking, you're medicated something, right? And so it's or you're trying to keep up with somebody, and that's a powerful thing too, right? Like, I want to, my neighbors have this nice thing, I want that too, to keep up with them. All right, awesome, great job acknowledging it. Why? There's really no good reason. I don't even talk to my neighbor, and I think that guy's a jerk. So, like, do you really want to be like them, or have like what they have? I don't know. That's up for you. That's for you to decide. But at least the thought process can get you to a place to question why, and really get after that programming. Because again, the programming thing, it has much greater ramifications than we want to give it credit. Specifically, if we want to be a positive influence, we want to be an influence in our kids' lives or our community or neighborhood, whatever it is, then we have to understand that our actions are being watched and that our programming is driving our actions, and it's programming those that we care about. And do you whether you acknowledge it or not, it's happening. So you can either control it and say, "Hey, I want to be intentional about how I program my kids," or you just I'll just let whatever happens happens. It's their life. If that's your kind of style, like, okay, good for you. But that's not how I approach it, right? Because I want my kids, I want the best for them, and I want them to learn from my mistakes, and I want to help them to be to step up from where I'm at. And a big part of that is programming and the words I use and how I interact with them and the memories I create and the lessons around money. Dude, I just looked it up because I was curious because I knew it was a lot, but I just didn't know the extent. So in the Bible, there are approximately 2,350 verses in the Bible. 2,350 verses in the Bible that discuss money, wealth, and possessions. 2,350. That's almost double the number of verses dedicated to faith and prayer combined. So faith and prayer combined is half of the times that money, wealth, possessions is mentioned in the Bible. What does that tell you? Like, God's not oblivious to this, right? If if you are seeking wisdom on these things, there's ample wisdom to be found. It's not that one verse that everybody misquotes. Oh, uh, money is the root of all evil. That's not even the verse, but that's the one that gets quoted. But that's your programming. That's your programming. So there are 2,349 other verses to change that programming potentially. And mind you, that verse, that's not even the verse, right? The root of all evil is not money. Did I say it right the first time? I may have said it right the first time. The verse is the root of all evil is the love of
Yeah.
money. And so as you look at programming and you look at your future and you look at your legacy, these are things you'd be intentional with. And there's few places that are as powerful that express themselves in a daily, tangible manifestation as finances.
It has a large impact on our lives. I mean, like you said, it's the number one cause of divorce. It's the number one cause of relationship killers, of business failures. But it doesn't have to be. It doesn't
Doesn't
have
have
to
to be.
be.
It can be life giving, right?
It could be life-giving. Yeah. It could be educational. It could be something that you sit around the dinner table and talk about, right? And it could be exciting. It could be, something that we started doing every year is we have an annual family um, giving meeting. And as a family, we sit around and talk about how we're going to use the money that we tithed all year long into our donor advice fund and give that away. I've never seen more joy on my two children's faces when they like decide to like give some money away. It's really, really cool. It's really, really cool. That's on the topic of money. You can talk to your children like you can, it goes to, like think about what you say to your kids on a daily basis. Like, do you say no and no, we can't afford that? No, that's too expensive. Or, do you say, or vice versa, like opposite, are you just spending money all the time? Just on anything and everything? Are there Amazon boxes hitting your doorstep every single day? Like either one of those, like you're saying something. You're programming them in some way.
Yeah, man. Well, hey, I want to close this out with the identity of a Connect Man. And in each of these topics, we have created identity statements within the Kinetic Man, and for finances, finance is no exception. So the identity of a Kinetic Man. So Kinetic Man views his money as a tool and a resource that serves him according to his core values. We are intentional in our personal finances because we know that they're an expression of our giving, our saving, and our spending. Right. So there's this definition. One, money is a tool and a resource that serves us. We do not serve money, right? And it's based on our core values. So that implies and inherent is that we've spent time actually diving into our core values, creating core values, understanding what's important to us, understanding, in the present and the long term, what we want our lives to be reflective of. And our money and our finances are an aspect that serves those things, not the other way around. And our intentionality in personal finances is expressed, again, it's a tangible expression, it's manifest in our giving, saving, and spending. Whether we choose to acknowledge it or not, others can see, our family can see that the way we treat money is an expression of exactly what I think is most important. And that's not just in spending, that's in my giving. Am I generous? Cool. You say you're generous. Okay, show me or how you're generous. Well, we give, faithfully give this amount or do whatever. Like we have conversation about, like you said, with your DAF, right? Your kids know there's a chunk of money that they're now responsible for giving away that didn't just show up. That was planned for, that was intentional, that came from the abundance of what you've been blessed with, right? And then finally, just in a fast statement for this identity, Connect Men don't serve money, money serves us. Like that's it, right? We do not serve money, money serves us. Well, it requires intentionality for that to be a reality. It requires you to very clearly work through and define these things that are so important for that to be reality. Otherwise, you're just gonna be the typical grind it out, work as much as I can, make as much as I can, suck it up for a rainy day. And then you realize at the end of your life, you're like, man, I got all this money and I can't do anything with it anymore.
For what?
For what? What do they say? They say either it's the health quote, and I love it. Like you're gonna spend money on health, right? Like either now or later.
Yeah.
Like you can spend money on good food and the gym and whatever now, be conscious of it, or it'll be doctor bills later.
Yeah.
And so I think we just have to understand that at some point we're gonna have to these things are gonna have to be rectified. We might as well do it sooner than later. We might as well have a vision and create those opportunities for those memories and those experiences now and be responsible about it. We're not suggesting you just go out and like, oh man, I got a paycheck. I'm just gonna blow it on an experience. Well, no, because then you're gonna experience something else. There's gonna be an experience from that as well. But it's not it's much more intentional than comfort. It's much more intentional than success. It's much, much more intentional than more because we're truly meant for more than that kind of life, right?
Yeah, buddy. Good stuff. Go be intentional.
Go be intentional. Hey, if you're not having these conversations, reach out to us, be part of these conversations. And if you don't want to do it with us, I would just encourage you, do it. Find somebody that you're comfortable with. And no kidding, just open the door for this conversation. hey, let's talk finances and see what happens, right? See what ask why. You don't even have to, there's no agenda to it. Just ask why. Why? Why? Right? And see what comes from that. Giddy up.
Giddy up. See ya.
Don't be potential. Get off the sidelines. Get off the couch. Don't be a sideline dad or dude. Giddy up. Thank you for listening to the Kinetic Man podcast. If you are growth-minded, community-focused, and willing to take uncommon action to redefine success and live an abundant life, visit our website at www.thekineticman.com to see all the ways we can connect.
And on our website, you can find more information on everything we're doing, like joining our meetup page to get the details on our webinars and our local Thursday gatherings here in Colorado. From our site, you can also find more information on and sign up for the next Kinetic Man retreat and the next house of our mastermind group. Finally, we always appreciate your love and support. Please share this episode and go rate us on your favorite podcast player of choice.
Thank you again. Now go take uncommon action.